Welcome to the Eat This Book podcast. I'm Michael Whitworth. Each day we take a small piece of scripture and we sit with it. Not a quick snack that disappears before lunch, not a chore you check off of a list, but rather a meal meant to be savored. So pull up a chair. Let's eat. Jacob has spoken his last words over his sons. 12 blessings, some of them barely blessings at all, more like hard truths wrapped in prophecy. Reuben's instability, Simeon and Levi's violence, Judah's scepter, Joseph's fruitfulness. Each son named, assessed, and assigned a future. Now Jacob is finished speaking, but he has one more instruction. I am about to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave in the field at Machpelah, east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought as a burial place. Jacob is precise. He names the location exactly. The field, the cave, the original purchase, the geography. There's no room for confusion. He's been thinking about this for years. Abraham and Sarah are buried there. Isaac and Rebekah are buried there. Leah is buried there. Jacob's first wife, the unloved one, the one who bore him 6 sons and a daughter. She's already in the cave, waiting. Bury me with my fathers. This is where I belong. And then Jacob draws his feet up into the bed, breathes his last, and is gathered to his people. I love that word gathered. The language is tender. Not he died alone, though he did. Gathered, rejoined, reunited with Abraham, Isaac, Sarah, Rebekah, Leah, the communion of the dead receiving another member. Jacob's sojourning is complete. The few and hard years are over. Whatever comes next, he's with his people now. Joseph falls on his father's face. He weeps over him. He kisses him. The man who held power over Egypt, who administered famine and saved nations, is now a son crying over his father's body. Joseph has wept before in Genesis. He wept when he heard his brothers confess guilt. He wept when he saw Benjamin. He wept when he revealed himself. He wept when Jacob arrived in Egypt. But this weeping is different. This is final. There's no reunion coming on the other side of this grief. Jacob is gone. Joseph commands his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. This is an Egyptian practice, not a Hebrew one. Embalming takes 40 days. The Egyptians mourn for 70. The entire nation observes Jacob's death as if he were one of their own nobility. Think about what this means. A Hebrew shepherd, a refugee who arrived during famine, is given a state funeral by the most powerful empire on earth. Pharaoh's household mourns. The nation stops. Jacob, who described his days as few and hard, is honored in death beyond anything he experienced in life. The man who blessed Pharaoh is now mourned by Pharaoh's people. When the days of mourning are complete, Joseph speaks to Pharaoh's household. He can't approach Pharaoh directly. He's in mourning. He's ritually unclean. So he sends a message through intermediaries. My father made me swear an oath. Bury me in the tomb I prepared in Canaan. Let me go up and bury my father, and I will return. Pharaoh grants permission. Go up and bury your father as he made you swear. And then the procession begins. This is no quiet family funeral. Joseph goes up. All the servants of Pharaoh go up with him, the elders of his household, the elders of Egypt. Joseph's entire household goes, his brothers go, their households go, only the children and flocks stay behind in Goshen. Chariots and horsemen accompany them. The text calls it a very great company. Egypt is escorting Jacob home. The nation that welcomed him in famine now honors him in death. The empire that fed his family now proceeds with his body back to the land of promise. It's a military escort, a statement visible for miles. They arrive at the threshing floor of Atad beyond the Jordan, and there they stop and mourn for 7 more days. The lamentation is so intense, so loud, that the Canaanites who live nearby take notice. They see the Egyptians mourning and name the place Abel Mizraim, mourning of Egypt. The Canaanites don't understand what they're seeing. They think it's an Egyptian funeral. They don't realize they're watching the future owners of their land returning one of their patriarchs to the soil. Jacob is coming home, and the land, somehow, recognizes it. The sons of Jacob carry him into Canaan. Not the Egyptian servants, not the chariots and horsemen, it's the sons. They carried their father's body to the cave of Machpelah, the field east of Mamre, the burial place of Abraham purchased from Ephron the Hittite, and they bury him there, just as he commanded. 3 generations of patriarchs in one cave, 3 generations of matriarchs beside them. The promises God made to Abraham are resting in that ground, waiting for fulfillment and resurrection. Jacob's body joins the testimony. The bones themselves declare, "We are not home yet, but we will be." And then Joseph returns to Egypt along with his brothers and everyone who went up with him. The journey is complete, the oath is fulfilled, the body is in Canaan, but the living must return to Egypt. The family isn't done there yet. Generations will pass before Israel comes home for good. For now, Goshen is where they live. Machpelah is where they're buried. The geography of their existence is split. Life in Egypt, death in Canaan. Present in exile, future in the promise. Here's what I think we should savor from this passage. First, where you're buried matters. Jacob was insistent. Not Egypt, Canaan. Not convenience, covenant. His body would rest in the land God promised, even though he'd spent 17 years in Egypt. Death became a declaration. His grave testified to a future he wouldn't live to see. If you're thinking about legacy, about what you'll leave behind, where your life will point, this passage asks, what will your final arrangements say? Not everyone can choose their burial place, but everyone can consider what their death will declare. Jacob's bones said, Canaan is home, Egypt is temporary. The promise outlasts me. Second, grief doesn't diminish with power. Joseph had everything Egypt could offer: authority, wealth, Pharaoh's favors. None of it insulated him from the pain of losing his father. He fell on Jacob's face and wept. Power doesn't protect you from loss. Success doesn't soften grief. The strongest leaders are still children when their parents die. If you're grieving and you feel like you should be handling it better, like your position or maturity should make this easier, this passage says, no. Joseph wept. You can too. Third, sometimes the world mourns what it doesn't fully understand. Egypt mourned for 70 days. The Canaanites named a place after the lamentation they witnessed. They didn't know the full story. They didn't understand the covenant or the promise or why this particular death mattered. But they sensed something significant was happening. Your grief may look strange to people who don't share your faith. Your funeral practices, your hope, your insistence that death isn't the final word, they may not understand it. That's okay. Egypt didn't understand either. They still mourned. They still processed. Sometimes witness happens even when comprehension doesn't. Fourth, the sons carried their father. At the end, after the Egyptian physicians and the chariots and the horsemen, it was the sons who bore Jacob's body into the cave, not hired servants, not royal attendants. It was his own children. If you've carried a parent to burial, literally or figuratively, you know what that weight feels like. The physical burden is also a symbolic one. You're bearing the person who bore you. You're completing a circle that began before your memory. The sons of Jacob carried their father into the ground, and then they walked back out into a world where he no longer existed. Carrying is holy work. Jacob's story ends in a cave, but the story doesn't end with Jacob. The promise continues. The 12 sons become 12 tribes. The family that went down to Egypt as 70 people will come back up as a nation. Death is not the last word. For Jacob, gathered to his people was a kind of homecoming. For his descendants, the land where he was buried would become their inheritance. If you're carrying someone right now, a parent in decline, a family member approaching the end, this passage says carry well. The last acts matter. The final honoring matters. Jacob's sons did what their father asked. They didn't cut corners. They didn't negotiate. They carried him to Canaan and laid him in the cave. If you're grieving someone who pointed you toward a promise you can't yet see, whose life testified to something beyond what you're experiencing now, this passage says their testimony continues. Jacob is still speaking from Machpelah. The bones in the ground still say, Canaan is home, and God keeps his promises. Next time on Eat This Book, with Jacob gone, old fears resurface, and the brothers wonder if Joseph's forgiveness was real. But what he says next echoes through all of Genesis. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Join me at the end of Genesis 50 as the story ends with a coffin in Egypt and a promise still alive. Thanks for eating with me. Until next time, may the Word dwell in you richly.